Hello Animals fans and welcome to another episode of AniLysis. We're on to number 52 and it is Hewlett Aldershot III. So I've just got this sort of stock photo of an old man in a bed and you'll see why I've got that image on the screen. He appears only in this book, book 18, The Decision, which is an axe-narrated book. So, how are we first introduced to the concept of Hewlett Aldershot III? Hey Eric, Marco said. What's up? Eric shrugged, exactly like any other young human of his apparent age. Not much, just something strange, something that doesn't make sense, at least not as far as we can see. The second-ranking guy in the Secret Service, a man named Hewlett Aldershot III, is in a hospital in a coma. He was hit by a car while walking across the street. We don't know why he's here in this area, but we do know this. No one even knows he's in the hospital. His family doesn't know? Cassie said. No one. Not his family, not his boss, Jane Carnegie. No one. The hospital is heavily infiltrated by Yerks. Half the staff are human controllers. His name isn't even in the hospital computers. And, oh, by the way, the car that hit him? A minivan belonging to none other than our friend Chapman. Well, Prince Jake said. I guess we'd better check it out. So, of course, it's our good friend, Eric the Chi, who comes to the animals and says, hey, guys, there's a guy in hospital, and there's no evidence of him being in hospital. He's just now there. And he's the second-ranking guy in the Secret Service. Not even his boss, Jane Carnegie, knows. We'll get onto her eventually in another episode, of course, but she's not really relevant to this one. He's in the hospital. He got hit by a car driven by Chapman. Of course, driven by Chapman, because it's Animorphs and Chapman needs to do things, apparently. So this guy gets hit. He's now in a coma. And yeah, so that's our setup. And so the Yerks are immediately like, this is very strange. Secret Service guy hit by a Yerk who we know is a Yerk and relatively high ranking. And there's no record of him in the hospital. So, suspicion abound. Now, we don't actually ever get descriptions of Hewlett Aldershot III in terms of his physical appearance, apart from the fact that he has hair on his body, which is something every human has, so it's not really relevant, and we come to that bit later. The only thing we really ever discuss about Hewlett Aldershot III is his name. And it's not surprising, really, is it? With a name like Hewlett Aldershot III. I have a question, Marco said. If you already have a Hewlett Aldershot and a Hewlett Aldershot Jr., what kind of parent is going to go and inflict that name on a third kid? He must have gotten beat up at school every single day of his life. I'm just saying, for all we know, Chapman just ran this guy down because he couldn't stand that name. Alright then, Marco. How many kids do you know called Marco? Probably not many, but it's actually not that bad a name, so fair enough. Hewlett Aldershot III is an unusual one. Yeah, Hewlett. It's almost like Hedrick. So Hedrick ran down Hewlett. These aren't normal names, are they? But I do like them. Every time you hear those names now, it's immediately Animorphs. It's not like Bill and Bob, or Steve and Gary. No, it's Hewlett and Hedrick. And yeah, it's whatever, but that's just a nice little funny bit there we get with Marco regarding this guy and his unusual name. So what happens next? The Animorphs, they go as seagulls to basically spy on Hewlett Aldershot III. They just hang around on this hospital windowsill. It's never told which hospital this is, whether it's the same hospital we've been to before. Oh no, that was a clinic in book 6. There are a few times animals go to hospitals in these books. Eventually we'll get to an AniLysis and distinguish between them, or whether they're all the same one, or what have you. That's for a video for another day. But anyway, they go to this hospital where Hewlett is in a coma, and they hang out on the windowsill, looking natural. We were on the sill outside the private hospital room of Hewlett Aldershot III. This was our second shift on the windowsill. We'd done a shift earlier in the morning, waiting for close to the 2-hour limit. Then Prince Jake and Cassie had taken a turn. Then it was back to us. This is so totally not what I want to be doing on a beautiful Saturday with major sales on at Express and Old Navy, Rachel complained. It's my turn to go fly around. Be right back. She flapped away, leaving me and Marco. We fluttered our wings a little and jerked our heads and marched back and forth on the stone sill. We were trying to act like seagulls. That's why Rachel had to fly off. It was the right thing for a seagull to do. A new human is entering the room, and I believe he is familiar. Rachel! Marco yelled in ThoughtSpeak. Go find Jake and Cassie and Tobias. We have company. Who? Visser 3 in his human morph, I said. The abomination. Shock horror! Boo hiss! Visser 3 turns up in Hewlett Aldershot III's room in his human morph, which the Animals recognise at this point. And so he scuttles in, and there's Hewlett Aldershot in his coma, and some doctors follow the Visser in, and this is the part where Visser 3 exposes his plan. Because you know what Visser 3's like. Even if he is in what you can only imagine as a busy hospital, he's just going to project his thoughts to everyone. The nurse a few doors down now knows Visser 3's plan, but that's irrelevant. Although it is suspected that maybe the Yeerks control this hospital and therefore probably control all the staff. And by extension, probably a lot of the people who come in as well. So maybe that's why Visser 3 is not really that bothered about announcing his plans to the whole hospital, because they're all controllers. That's probably what we can expect. Else, you know, freaking Janice, the cleaner, is overhearing Visser 3 talking about the aliens taking over the Secret Service. What's she supposed to make of that? She's not going to freaking carry on with her mop, is she? She's going to go to the authorities, you know. So, no, Janice is probably also a controller. But that's all speculation. Let's just concentrate on Hewlett. What is the plan with Hewlett? Let's go over the quotes now which show us, or tell us, thanks Visser 3, the plan. 2 human doctors came into the room. They spoke to the Visser. They spoke respectfully, fearfully, shaking. I could not hear them through the glass, but clearly they knew who and what Visser 3 was. Visser 3 began to demorph, to return to Andalite form. The doctors were shaking. Obviously something was wrong. Then in a flash, Visser 3 pressed his tailblade against one doctor's throat. Now that he was back in his Andalite body, we could hear Visser 3's unguarded thought speak. I gave orders that this human be cured, he raged. There is no point placing one of our people in his head if he's unable to move. The doctor said something very respectful, very careful. I don't care about his brain stem. I want him repaired. Do you have any idea how useful this human would be to us? He is the number 2 man in the organization that guards their president. He would have access to half the secrets on this planet. That's why I arranged for him to be injured and brought here. You leave me with no choice. If I can't use this creature as a host, I'll have to acquire him and morph him. I can't spend all my time in his form. I can't live his life. But using him, I can get close to his superior. I can use this morph to seize her instead. The doctor, who was still standing, spoke. He smiled. He looked encouraging and enthusiastic. The Visser flicked his tail, hit the doctor with the flat of his blade, and knocked him across the room. Don't tell me it's all worked out for the best, Visser 3 sneered. I still want this human repaired. That's the only reason I let you live. 3 days from now this human will be well, or the 2 of you will be very, very, very sick. Thank you, Visser 3, for explaining it to everyone in earshot, or thought shot, which according to our ThoughtSpeak AniLysis can be quite far actually. So everyone in the local vicinity knows about Visser 3's plan, which is basically to put this guy in a coma. No, what is his plan again? To injure this guy, but not so much that he's completely damaged, just injure him so that he's in a hospital, so that Visser 3 can come into the hospital, get him infested. Yeah, basically, I'm trying to get it from my head. Visser 3's plans are always so freaking convoluted. More so than they ever need to be. yeah, he's got the guy injured so that he can infest him. So he's got a controller in the Secret Service so that he can eventually get the person, Jane Carnegie, who's in charge of him, in charge of the Secret Service, and then get the president. Bearing in mind that in a few books he has the chance to get the president in his helicopter, but doesn't, as we discovered in the last AniLysis. Visser 3 seems to be attempting to do everything except achieve his main goals. Instead of injuring him, why not injure Jane Carnegie? This guy, I don't get him. Why injure this guy so that you can infest this person over here when you can just injure that person and infest her straight away? Why do this to Hewlett over here? Just leave Hewlett alone. Leave Hewlett alone. You don't need him. In fact, just go to the Oval Office and infest the president. We know that you have the capabilities through all the things you Yerks have done. You can, apparently, you can freeze a helicopter in midair. You can freeze the decoy of Marine 1 in midair and freeze the crew on board and take them aboard the Blade ship and infest them there or acquire them or whatever. Just frickin' do it already. What are you wasting time for, Visser 3? Just frickin' do it. I know. The series would be very short if Visser 3 actually did what he was capable of doing. I get it, but at the same time, I enjoy having a little rant and rave about it because, you know what, it's all in good fun. I love the series, but sometimes it does make you think it doesn't need to be this way. Anyway, that's Visser 3's convoluted plan, and the Animals think it's a great plan. And then they think, how can we actually turn this to our advantage? You know, it's a pretty good plan Visser 3 has, Prince Jake pointed out. He acquires our man Hewlett Aldershot III, then he walks into work at the Secret Services office, punches up anything he wants on the computer, sits in on secret conferences, and ends up knowing everything the Secret Service knows. It's not just what he can find out, it's who he can talk to and get access to, Rachel said. He can find out if any information about Yerk activities ever gets to— Whoa! Marco shot straight up on his two wobbly legs. I can never get past thinking humans will topple over when they do that. What whoa? Prince Jake asked mildly. Whoa as in whoa, Rachel is right. H.A. Third can talk to anyone, right? He can talk to his boss, right? So if he was to walk in and say, boss, guess what? Parasites slugs from outer space are invading Earth, well, okay, they'd throw him in the nut house. But if he was to walk in and say, parasite slugs from outer space are invading Earth, and guess what? I can turn into a rhinoceros. And then he actually did turn into a rhinoceros. Well, suddenly, boom! The secret is out. The Yerks are screwed. Unless his boss is a controller, Rachel said. If she were a controller, why would Visser 3 be bothering with H.A. Third? Cassie pointed out. So the Animorphs can turn this around. They can acquire Hewlett Aldershot III and go to Jane Carnegie and convince her that there's an alien invasion, and then the whole Secret Service knows there's an alien invasion. Which of course will have its own problems down the line, as we'll get into in like future Annie theories or timelines or whatever, because yeah, that's a bigger story on the benefits of the population knowing. We see what happens post 45 when the population starts to figure it out. It actually gets a bit violent. So whatever, that's a different video. Yeah, so the animals think we can turn this to our advantage in their naive minds at the time. But then that causes a moral problem, as many times happens in Animorphs. They would have to morph Hewlett Aldershot III, and they have a principle of not morphing sentient beings. Except when they decide to change those rules. What exactly are you thinking? Are you talking about morphing Mr. Aldershot? Duh, yeah. We don't do that, Cassie said. I thought we decided we don't do that. We don't morph humans. I morphed Prince Jake, I said. I was excited by Marco's idea, but there are times when my human friends are reluctant to do whatever it takes to hurt the Yerks. Sometimes, so am I. And Cassie morphed Rachel that time, Tobias said. First of all, Axe, you're not a human, so maybe it's okay if you morph Jake. Besides, Jake would have given his permission if he hadn't been infested with the Yerk. And Rachel did give me her permission, Cassie said. Excuse me, Marco said with an edge of sarcasm in his voice. Our man HA3rd can't give permission. He's a vegetable, a carrot, he's a cabbage, he's a tomato. I thought tomatoes were fruit, Rachel interrupted, trying to provoke Marco. It's called a persistent vegetative state. Thanks so much for your sensitivity, Marco, Cassie said. But we don't know if Mr. Aldershot is that bad off. He could just be in a coma. We don't have the right to go stealing his DNA. The man is a Brussels sprout, Marco said. We'd never get in there anyway, Prince Jake said. Visser 3 knows we know. We have to be in human form to acquire Aldershot's DNA. You think we could do that with Visser 3 on guard? Not likely. This is another one of those funny times where they just arbitrarily change the rules. And it's Cassie, of course. So Cassie says, we don't go acquiring humans. And then Axe butts in and says, hey, I've done it. And then somebody tells Cassie, wait, you morphed Rachel. And Cassie turns around with her lying little face and says, I did get Rachel's permission, even though rewind to book 12 and you will see that she did not get Rachel's permission. You little liar, Cassie. It's actually in the... You can go read it, viewers of this video now. Go read book 12. She never got Rachel's permission to morph her. You little lying bugger. And also there's then this excuse of, well, maybe because you're not human, Axe, maybe you can morph humans without their permission. No, Cassie, that's not what we agreed. You're changing the rules. As Cassie does. Oh, well, maybe my principles can be adjusted 180 degrees just for this one time. She's such a little hypocrite, and God, I love her. She's great. Oh, but she's so frustrating sometimes. Well, we have this thing that we never do, but... Arbitrary rule. There, sorted. It was, you can't morph sentient beings. Now it's, well, you can if you're not a member of that race. Yeah, shut up, Cassie. Anyway, what happens then is they completely forget that they've had this moral question and just go ahead with the plan anyway. They get distracted and then suddenly forget where they were and just do the plan anyway. How are they going to do it? I tell you, my good viewers, they're going to morph mosquitoes, suck up Hewlett's blood, and use that to morph him. So they go to the hospital. Axe is there to cause a distraction, because all these rooms are now guarded by the Secret Service. So let's look at how the hospital's set up. And yeah, basically what happens is Axe goes into that setup and comes back out of Hewlett Aldershot's window by launching himself through. It's good fun. Hewlett Aldershot III was still in his hospital bed, but there was a major difference. There were now 4 large humans seated around him. In the room next door to the left, we saw 4 more, and in the room next door to the right, another 4. Human controllers, no doubt, and no doubt heavily armed. 12 armed humans to protect Hewlett Aldershot III from us. Kind of flattering, actually, Rachel said. 12 guys? And maybe more we don't see. The Yerks must have some high-ranking people in this hospital, Cassie observed. To get 2 private rooms just for guards like that. I struck and the nearest guard leapt back, ploughing into his men. I had about half a second before they'd recover and shoot. Thwap! Crash! I shattered the window of my tailblade. Here's a trick I learned from Visser 3, I yelled. I ran 3 steps, docked my upper body, flattened my stalk eyes, tucked my legs and flew through the shattered window. So the place is heavily armed, but Axe goes in there, causes the distraction, then opens the window, drops down into the bushes below, while the others have morphed Mosquito. And now Axe joins them, morphs Mosquito, and they all land on Hewlett Aldershot III, ready to suck his blood. But something strange happens. Huge, vast beyond imagining, stretched my target. Hundreds of times my length, millions of times my weight, Hewlett Aldershot III lay prone, oozing attractive aromas. I fluttered on gossamer wings and landed. I was on a rough, uneven surface. There were bumps and ridges of warm, pink flesh. Here and there, like lonesome trees scattered on a dry plain, Hairs rose like curved spears from the flesh. The flesh was alive. It moved slightly, causing me to rise and fall. The human was breathing. But more fascinating than the slow rise and fall of breath was the thump, thump, thump of a drumbeat beneath my feet. A pulse. The beating pulse of blood rushing through arteries and veins. And then... This is where the main plot of the story comes in, because they just get transported to another part of the universe. Away from Hewlett Aldershot III, who's left on his hospital bed, the animals disappear and go fight a battle on the Lyran planet. So we don't see Hewlett Aldershot for the majority of the rest of this book, but we do eventually come back to him at the end of the book. And this is what happens. The animals have literally just popped back into existence, and then this. Right then, as I sat on vibrating human flesh, surrounded by giant hairs, a huge sky-filling object came hurtling down toward me. "No way!" Rachel yelled. "Axe, move out!" I fired my wings. The object, 5 fingers each as big around as a large tree, came slapping down at me. "Ow!" said Hewlett Aldershot III, as he slapped the spot where I'd been busily biting him. "Ow!" he said again. "The human! He's awake!" one of the human controllers said. "He's not supposed to wake up yet," another moaned. "He's in a coma." "What do we do?" "The Visser will kill us." "The police are coming. We can't be taken." "Run! Run!" "What do we do with this Aldershot human?" "We have no orders." "Run!" someone yelled again, and this time the rest agreed. There came a loud, vibrating thunder as the human controllers all raced from the room in a panic. Moments later, a frightened nurse came in. "Mr. Aldershot, you're conscious." "Of course I'm conscious," he said. "Nurse, are you aware that this room is full of mosquitoes?" And so, Hewlett Aldershot III is woken from his coma by Axe biting him. And we get absolute confirmation of that, or what the animals suspect is confirmation of that, in this quote. "Yeah," Marco said. "That's what's strange. The word yanked. Us turning into mosquitoes to suck some guy's blood so he could morph into him, and instead ending up in the middle of some war-to-control psychic yellow frogs, and, oh, by the way, blowing up a small continent full of yerks, saving an entire species, then getting back here to find out that Coma Man woke up from a mosquito bite delivered by a morphed alien/deer/scorpion/four-eyed centaur. That's all totally normal. That's just an average day. Dear Diary, another boring average day, till someone said yanked." So the animals are pretty certain that Axe, as a mosquito biting Hewlett Aldershot III, woke him from his coma. A nurse came running in saying, "Oh no, you're conscious now, you're conscious." And we don't know if she is a controller or not. But the fact of the matter is, Hewlett Aldershot wakes from his coma, and that's basically the end of the book. We never hear from Hewlett Aldershot III again. He just wakes up from his coma, and we never hear of that story again. It was all basically a way to get the animals onto planet Lyra. A very roundabout way of doing it. So, now that we've covered all the quotes, let's discuss Hewlett Aldershot III. Because he's only relevant to this book, we can't really go into anything else about him apart from the stuff we're given. Visser III's plan was to infest him, and if he couldn't infest him, he would morph him. Why didn't the Visser do that straight away? Why? How do we know he hasn't? Because what happens after the first time, after we see Visser III, he chases the animals out the window, and there's a bit of a fight, and then they separate, and whatever. Everyone survives, everyone goes their separate ways. What's to stop Visser III from going back to the hospital, which apparently he has control of, and immediately saying, right, the Andalite bandits know he's here, I'm going to acquire Hewlett now, and then do my thing. So Hewlett Aldershot III would then be effectively irrelevant to everything going on prior to the whole mosquito antics going on. So maybe Visser III goes ahead with going to the Secret Service place, morphed as Hewlett Aldershot III, and discovering all the Secret Service secrets. We can only assume that because that doesn't seem to happen, that Visser III just thought, sod it, the Andalite Bandalites? That's a good band, the Andalite Bandalites. Yeah, I like that. The Andalite bandits know of our plan, but you know what? Let's make it fun. Let's give him a chance to screw us over again, as Visser 3 tends to do. It's just Visser 3 being a plonker as he normally is. He's not very clever, let's be honest. Yeah. He had so many opportunities to just morph this guy and go do the thing, but no, he decided to wait, and then Hewlett Aldershot III woke from his coma, and it's all sunshine and rainbows for Hewlett then. That plotline just goes away, and we never hear about it again. Nothing happens from it, apparently. Hard to believe, honestly, but this is Animorphs, and sometimes you just got to say, okay, just let it be. So, overall, he didn't really provide much to the series apart from a silly name. That's basically it. It could have been anyone. It could basically have been anyone. You could say, oh, it had to be a Secret Service guy, but this plot becomes irrelevant entirely. It could be anybody. It doesn't have an effect on the rest of the series. So, Hewlett, disappointed, mate. You know, I thought you could have added a bit more to the series. You could have been a bit more important. You could have maybe been a bit of a deeper plot line, because you were basically just a vehicle to get us to the Lyran planet. That's basically all you were. A very roundabout way of doing it, and there you are. You're a lazy git. Get out of bed. Jesus Christ. He will only be remembered for his silly name. That's basically the legacy of Hewlett Aldershot III. So, what we're going to cover next time, we're going to look at the DNA tracking computer from book 49. It's going to be quite a... We'll try to make it fun. So join me for that one. And thank you to Hewlett, and thank you to you, and thank you to everything and everyone everywhere. Except for the people I don't want to thank. And the things that annoy me, like Honda Jazzers. I'm not going to thank you. Bugger off. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time somewhere else in the Animorphs universe. Ta-ra.